What if I told you there's a planet out there where dragons weren't just legends, but the rulers, the sentinels, and perhaps the last witnesses to humanity itself? The first sign we were approaching the planet came not through our instruments, but through the sky. A storm of color unlike anything in our charts, ribbons of emerald and violet lightning tearing across clouds, thicker than any hurricane we've ever seen. From the bridge of the ship, the view was hypnotic, terrifying. And beneath those swirling tempests, shadows moved, shapes so vast, so impossibly ancient, that every instinct screamed they were alive. We had come seeking a forbidden world, one that, according to the fragmented records of lost explorers, had been quarantined centuries ago. The logs were vague, almost delirious, filled with warnings that no human had dared to return. But we were obsessed. The promise of discovery, of proving the impossible, outweighed any fear. Our first landing was violent. Atmospheric friction ignited the hull as the ship pierced the planet's upper layers. And when we finally broke through the clouds, the world below stretched endlessly. A vast landscape of jagged obsidian cliffs, forests of glass-like trees that shimmered in the storm, and rivers that glowed faintly with bioluminescent minerals. It was beautiful and utterly hostile. We had barely touched down when we felt it, a presence. Not just a predator, not just an animal, but something intelligent, massive and calculating. From the tree line, eyes like molten gold appeared, reflecting the storm above. They were watching us, weighing us. And then, with a roar that split the sky, the first dragon emerged. Wings vast enough to eclipse the forests, scales that shimmered like molten metal, and a gaze that pierced straight through to our very thoughts. I remember thinking, in that instant, that we were intruders in a world older than humanity's memory. And perhaps that was true. These dragons moved with a purpose, a rhythm that hinted at centuries of rule, of knowledge preserved through lifetimes we could never endure. Our team advanced cautiously, instruments raised, scanners humming, but the readings were useless. Energy signatures fluctuated wildly. Magnetic fields distorted reality itself. We were venturing into a space where physics obeyed a different set of rules, where dragons bent the world to their presence rather than merely existing within it. It was then that we saw the first signs of memory markers that made the impossible tangible. Ruins scattered across jagged plateaus, but unlike anything human. And yet, hints of human influence. Structures that mirrored our architecture, symbols that resembled writing, but warped, ancient. It was as if the dragons had not only survived our species, but had watched it, cataloged it, remembered it. And in some unfathomable way, they waited. At night, the world transformed. The storm above became a symphony of light and sound, each flash illuminating dragons perched on cliffs, their eyes tracking our every movement. Some slept, wings folded like dark sails. Others moved silently through the forests, shadows gliding over rivers that glowed like liquid fire. Every sound we made echoed unnaturally, almost as if the planet itself was listening and choosing what to reveal. It was during the second night that we made our first contact. Not by words, there were none, but through a shared recognition, an exchange almost imperceptible. One dragon descended, landing on a ridge above our camp. Its breath was smoke and flame, but in the quiet moments between roars, I could swear it hummed with intelligence. And then it did something impossible. It spoke not with words, but with thought. A wave of memory crashed through my mind. Visions of cities long destroyed, of humans walking among dragons, of knowledge traded, treaties made and broken. These creatures remembered humanity not as myth, not as history, but as living presence. We froze, unable to comprehend the weight of what we were witnessing. For centuries, humans believed dragons to be stories, warnings, entertainment. But here, they were the archivists of our legacy. Every gesture, every roar, every slow blink was layered with memory, a living testament to our past mistakes and our vanished reach. Days passed, and our fear transformed into obsession. We began tracking them, careful not to provoke, yet desperate to understand. The dragon society was structured, intricate beyond human comprehension. They moved in coordinated sweeps across the skies, hunting, guarding, patrolling. And they watched us, always. Some nights we glimpsed what I can only describe as gatherings, clusters of dragons atop colossal spires of stone, their wings forming a cathedral-like canopy as they communicated in low, resonant tones that shook the ground beneath our feet. Then came the anomaly. A single hatchling, no larger than a wolf, separated from the rest. It approached cautiously, curiosity burning in its amber eyes. Unlike the adults, it did not speak through memory or thought. It simply observed. And in that observation, a connection was formed, a bridge across species, across centuries. We realized then that the dragons were testing us, measuring not just our courage or intelligence, but our capacity for empathy. But not all dragons were patient. One night, while we studied a series of ruins carved into cliffs overlooking a luminescent canyon, a shadow detached from the storm. It was massive, older than any other we had seen, scales blacker than obsidian. It circled the camp once, twice, before unleashing a roar that vibrated through our bones. Instruments failed, comms went silent, and a windstorm erupted from nowhere. We barely survived, our ship shaking violently as though the planet itself was asserting authority. And then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. The dragon had left, but the message was clear. This world answers to its rulers, and humanity is not among them. Over the following days, we pieced together fragments of understanding. The dragon's memory was selective, almost moral. They recalled humans who had respected them, who had sought knowledge without conquest. They remembered humans who had destroyed and enslaved them, and the memory of that pain lingered, like a scar etched across the centuries. And in their eyes, we saw judgment, not vengeance, not anger, but the quiet, inevitable weight of history. One morning, while traversing a ridge that overlooked a sprawling valley of crystalline forests, we found something that stopped us cold. Hundreds of statues, enormous and lifelike, carved from rock and fused with metal. Dragons depicted mid-flight, guarding structures eerily familiar to human architecture. And among them, figures of humans, small and fragile, yet depicted with reverence. These sculptures were not recent. They were ancient beyond comprehension, yet untouched by time or decay. The message was impossible to ignore. Dragons had preserved a record of humanity's potential, a warning, and perhaps a plea. The more we explored, the more we realized that this planet was not just forbidden, it was sentient. It seemed to align itself with the dragons, amplifying their presence, their memory, their judgment. Every storm, every lightning strike, every shift in gravity was not random. It was deliberate. The planet itself was alive, aware, and it seemed to recognize us. And the terrifying part, we weren't sure if it saw us as guests or intruders. On our final night before leaving the surface, we gathered around the hatchling again. It had grown bolder, brushing against our gear, sniffing at our presence as though measuring whether we could be trusted. And then, it did something extraordinary. It led us to a cavern hidden beneath a waterfall of liquid crystal. Inside, the walls shimmered with images not projected, not painted, but alive, moving like liquid memory. Dragons in flight, humans walking among them, landscapes rising and falling with the ebb of centuries. And at the center, a single phrase etched in a language that somehow felt familiar, resonating deep within our minds. Remember us. We left the planet that night, our ship battered, our minds shattered, and our understanding of the universe forever altered. But the question that haunted every member of our crew was clear. If these dragons remember humanity, do they also remember what we once were? And more dangerously, do they know what we might become? As we broke through the atmosphere and left the storms behind, a shadow passed over the ship. A silhouette, wings outstretched, larger than any living memory, gliding across the turbulence like a sentinel of judgment. And in that moment, we knew Our presence had been noted, catalogued, weighed, and when we returned, the dragons would be waiting. Because this world does not forgive ignorance. It does not forget. And for those who dare to return, it holds secrets that are as beautiful as they are deadly. The hatchling's eyes haunted me as we ascended into the void. Those golden eyes held more than curiosity, they held memory. And the memory of humanity. A memory that had survived long after we thought ourselves lost. And somewhere, in the depths of that storm-racked planet, the dragons whispered among themselves. They remembered us. But the question remained, and it lingered like smoke in the cabin. Would they also remember revenge? The storm was far behind us, but the feeling that we had not truly left lingered. And the memory of what we had seen, what had seen us, would follow humanity into the stars. Our journey had only begun. The stars were not the same when we returned to orbit. From the ship's windows, the void stretched infinitely, but the memory of the planet, its storms, its dragons, its whispered judgments clung to us like a shadow we could not shake. Every flicker of light on the hull, every vibration in the engines, seemed to echo the heartbeat of that forbidden world. We had expected silence, distance, the relief of leaving a dangerous planet behind. But instead, an uneasy tension filled the cabin. Instruments showed nothing extraordinary, yet every crew member moved with the feeling that unseen eyes were still watching. And in the quietest hours, when only the hum of the ship's life support punctuated the void, we heard it, a resonance, faint and almost imperceptible, vibrating through the hull. It was a sound that carried memory, as if the planet or the dragons themselves had reached out beyond their storms, reminding us that we were still part of their reckoning. Days passed. We cataloged the data we had risked everything to collect. Atmospheric readings, energy signatures, structural mappings of ruins, and images of the hatchling that had led us into the crystalline cavern. But every file felt incomplete, every recording inadequate. Something vital had slipped through our instruments, a presence, alive and intelligent, that no technology could capture. And then, the anomalies began. It started with a simple pattern, a faint energy spike every time we replayed a recording of the dragon hatchling. At first, we assumed it was a glitch, but the spikes grew more pronounced, synchronized with subtle, almost imperceptible changes in the ship's gravity field. Objects shifted slightly, not enough to be alarming, but enough to unsettle. Screens flickered with shapes that seemed too deliberate to be random scales glinting in ways that could not exist in video feed alone. And at night, when the cabin lights dimmed, shadows moved in ways that mirrored the dragon's gestures on the recordings. We tried to rationalize it. Perhaps the planet's energy was embedded in the samples we'd brought aboard. Perhaps we were seeing hallucinations after days of stress. But deep down, we knew better. We had not escaped the planet. Its memory had followed us, threaded itself into the very atoms of our ship. One evening, I returned to the cabin to find the hatchling's recording playing itself. The video shimmered, the image warping in slow, deliberate pulses, as if breathing. And then the hatchling looked directly at the camera, directly at me. Not the lens, not the device at me. And I could swear it blinked, as though acknowledging our continued presence in its world. The next morning, our scans revealed something impossible, a faint magnetic signature trailing our ship, moving independently. At first, we thought it was an artifact, a remnant of the stormy exit from the planet. But the signal persisted, weaving through the void behind us, tracking our path across light years. And then came the communication attempt, a single resonant pulse in frequencies no human had ever generated. It was subtle, a vibration in the hull that bypassed instruments, felt more than heard. And it carried a single, undeniable message. We see you. The realization struck every one of us like a shockwave. The dragons were not bound to their planet. Their awareness, their memory, could extend far beyond the storms, far beyond the mountains, far beyond what we thought possible. And if they could follow us, then humanity's place in the universe had just become infinitely smaller. We convened in the ship's observation deck, staring into the endless expanse. The hatchling's image flickered across the screens, its golden eyes now appearing in every reflection, every shimmer of light. Crew members spoke in hushed, uncertain tones. Some theorized that the dragons had evolved forms of consciousness, capable of interacting with energy across distances. Others whispered darker possibilities, that our intrusion had marked us, that we were now under judgment not just on that planet, but across every domain their kind could influence. Sleep became impossible. Dreams were invaded by scales, by wings that eclipsed suns, by ancient roars that carried centuries of memory and unspoken questions. Some of us awoke screaming, reaching for shadows that weren't there. Others, like me, felt a persistent tugging, a pull toward the planet we had left behind, as though some unseen tether refused to release us. And then, the breakthrough, or perhaps the warning. While analyzing the crystalline cavern's energy signatures, we detected a pattern within the memories embedded in the recordings. The images were not static. They were instructions, almost imperceptible sequences in the dragon's movements, the light pulses of the bioluminescent rivers, even in the patterns of storm strikes above the ruins. It was a map, a code, a puzzle left by the dragons themselves. Curiosity outweighed fear. We began to decode it, slowly, meticulously. And the deeper we delved, the more horrifying and magnificent the discovery became. The dragons had charted human evolution, tracked humanity's potential for destruction and creation, recorded not only what we had done, but what we might yet do. And woven into the map was a path away back, not just to the planet, but to the core of its memory, to the place where dragons archived everything. We argued about whether to follow it. The stakes were immense. This was no longer an expedition. It was an invitation and a challenge. The crew was divided. Some feared the planet's memory, convinced that humans had no right to trespass further. Others, including myself, felt that ignoring the path would be the true crime, a failure to confront what the universe had left for us to see. Eventually, the decision was made. We would follow the map wherever it led, knowing that the dragons would be waiting, and knowing that the universe itself seemed to have grown aware of our actions. The journey back to the Forbidden's planet was different this time. The void itself felt altered. Comets left trails that glimmered like molten glass. Stars flickered in rhythms we could almost interpret. And every system we passed showed anomalies that could no longer be explained by natural phenomena alone. It was as if the planet's memory had seeped into the cosmos, shaping reality subtly around our trajectory. When we re-entered the upper atmosphere, the storms were quieter, yet infinitely more oppressive. Lightning arced in slow, deliberate paths, as if drawing sigils in the sky. And then, as we descended, we saw them not scattered, not hunting, but assembled. Hundreds of dragons perched atop cliffs and spires, their wings outstretched, forming shapes that mimicked the architecture of human ruins. It was an aerial cathedral, a gathering that seemed to pulse with collective consciousness. The hatchling appeared first, darting between the colossal forms, leading us toward a valley we had never seen on our first visit. The cliffs there were etched with runes older than any language we had discovered. The trees shimmered with a strange luminescence, almost as if the light itself was alive, moving in recognition of our presence. And in the center, a colossal stone formation rose from the valley floor, a throne-like structure, carved in the shape of intertwined dragons, its surface pulsing faintly as if breathing. As we approached, a voice resonated not through speakers, not through instruments, but in our minds, clear and direct. "You have returned. Do you remember why you left?" It was not anger, not accusation, but weighty, deliberate, the kind of question that carries centuries of patience and the memory of civilizations. And yet, embedded in it, we felt curiosity, and perhaps hope. We stepped forward, hearts pounding, instruments trembling in our hands. The air itself seemed alive, resonating with an energy that made every hair stand on end. And then the stone throne shifted an impossibility. Dragons emerged from its surface, living forms that had been carved from memory itself. Their scales shimmered with the colors of the storms, their eyes reflecting a wisdom and judgment beyond human comprehension. One of the dragons, larger than any we had seen, approached. Its gaze swept over the crew, pausing on me. And then, the realization hit, a wave that left us all silent. This was not just a ruler. This was a guardian, a historian, and a sentient archivist of humanity's legacy. It remembered everything. And now, it would test everything we had brought with us. Our courage, our curiosity, our morality. As the first drops of a storm fell, heavier than any rain we had felt before, I realized the truth. Humanity had returned not to claim, not to conquer, but to be judged. And the dragons were not merely observers. They were participants in our fate. Then, with a motion that was both deliberate and terrifyingly graceful, the guardian extended its wings. A wave of energy emanated from it, knocking our instruments offline and throwing our bodies to the ground. And yet, in that moment, clarity arrived. We were not intruders. Not yet. But the dragons had set the terms. And every step we took from this moment onward would determine whether we would be remembered as allies, intruders, or something far worse. The hatchling landed beside us, looking up with eyes that carried understanding far beyond its size. The guardian's roar followed, not a sound, but a resonance that shook the valley, echoing with memory and intent. And in that sound, I realized we were not just visiting a forbidden planet. We were stepping into a living archive, a memory, and it was awake. As the storm intensified and shadows of dragons filled the skies above, I understood something I hadn't grasped before. The dragons had not merely survived humanity, they had waited for us. And what we would do next would decide not just our fate, but the memory of everything we had been. The valley trembled beneath the weight of centuries, and in that trembling, a choice hung before us, vast and terrifying: confront the dragon's memory or be consumed by it. And in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. The storm's roar had become a living chorus, a vibration that coursed through the valley and into our very bones. The dragons above moved with deliberate precision, wings slicing the clouds in synchronized arcs, shadows stretching like black rivers across jagged terrain. The hatchling remained by our side, a small steady presence against the overwhelming magnitude of their gathering. I could feel its pulse, rhythmic and insistent, as if urging us forward. But toward what? That question gnawed at me as we stepped deeper into the valley. The ground itself seemed to breathe. Crystalline vegetation swayed even without wind, reflecting fractured light in impossible angles. Each step we took echoed unnaturally, resonating not only through the rock, but through our own minds. I realized with a growing sense of unease that the planet, or perhaps the dragons themselves, were communicating through the environment. Every sound, every shimmer of light, every subtle vibration carried intention. We were walking not just on a world, but through a memory, alive and aware. The central spire of the valley rose ahead, twisting like molten metal frozen mid-flight, its apex shrouded in storm clouds that crackled with green and violet lightning. It was the place the hatchling had led us toward, and as we approached, the enormity of its presence became unbearable. Even from a distance, it radiated authority, the kind that can silence thought and bend perception. The guardian dragon that had roared moments before hovered near its peak, wings tucked in a posture that suggested both patience and an unspoken warning. We paused at the base of the spire, instruments useless, scanners registering only erratic energy spikes. The hatchling nudged us forward, its golden eyes locking on each of ours in turn. Then it leaped, disappearing into a narrow fissure in the spire's surface. With a collective breath, we followed, squeezing through a gap that seemed impossibly small for what lay beyond. Inside, the spire was alive. The walls pulsed with faint light, as though veins of energy ran through the rock itself. Shapes moved in the periphery of our vision, dragons frozen mid-flight, carved into the stone yet somehow breathing. Scales shimmering like wet metal, eyes glinting with intelligence. I could feel them watching, assessing, cataloging. And at the center of the chamber, suspended in the air without support, was a crystalline orb. Its surface rippled like water, reflecting scenes from Earth we had never recorded. Lost cities, extinct forests, oceans drained of life, and humans walking among dragons in impossible harmony. The orb pulsed, and suddenly the chamber around us shifted. The walls became fluid, the dragons embedded within them moving, their limbs stretching and twisting in surreal, impossible geometries. We were no longer observers, we were participants. And the orb's voice came not in words, but as a resonant wave that wrapped itself around our consciousness. Do you understand what you have returned to? Each of us experienced something different. For me, it was the sensation of centuries compressing into a single heartbeat. I saw humanity rise and fall, our triumphs and our betrayals, all witnessed by dragons whose memory extended beyond the linear constraints of time. I felt their patience, their sorrow, their disappointment, and a strange, almost imperceptible hope. One crew member, Liara, collapsed, muttering fragmented visions of dragons in human cities, treaties broken by ignorance, wars that had never truly ended. Others shook uncontrollably, the sheer weight of history pressing down on our nervous systems. It was no longer simply about discovery or survival. It was about accountability. The dragon's memory was not just record, it was judgment. Suddenly, the orb shimmered violently, and the chamber shifted again. The dragons frozen in the walls were gone, replaced by empty voids that seemed to swallow light. The hatchling screeched, the sound piercing, urgent. And in that moment, a revelation hit. The planet was not passive. It was not merely a repository of memory. It was a living entity, its consciousness intertwined with the dragons. And what we had taken for exploration was now interaction provocation. Then, from the shadows of the chamber, a new presence emerged. A dragon unlike any we had encountered, larger, older, its scales a deep iridescent black, edged in silver. Its eyes were pools of molten gold, reflecting not just our forms, but the very essence of our thoughts. And when it moved, the air itself seemed to warp around it. It circled us slowly, deliberately, and the orb pulsed in synchrony. We realized it was speaking not to us, but through us. Memories we had not known we possessed surfaced, dreams of humanity's potential, fears of our own extinction, flashes of choices not yet made. And then the truth became undeniable. The dragons did not merely remember humanity, they remembered every human. Every decision, every act, every step that had led us to this moment. And they were weighing it. The hatchling darted ahead, pressing us forward along a spiraling path within the spire. The walls became transparent, revealing vast chambers below, ecosystems impossible to sustain. Rivers of liquid light, dragons in suspended animation, as if frozen in meditation. And beneath them, in an abyssal depth, we glimpsed ruins unmistakably human. Cities not of stone or metal, but of energy, holographic yet tangible, shimmering as if alive. And standing at their center, a human figure or something that had once been human gazed upward at the dragons. I tried to speak, to ask what it was, but the chamber's resonance swallowed my words. Then, as the hatchling reached a landing ledge near the spire's core, the orb pulsed brighter than ever. In that brilliance, the walls dissolved entirely, and we were thrown into a vision. We saw ourselves not as we were, but as we could be. Every choice we might make from this point onward was displayed, branching in fractal complexity. And intertwined with those possibilities were dragons, ancient and eternal, moving with purpose, guiding or obstructing, memory and judgment inseparable. And at the heart of it all was a question: could humanity reconcile with memory? Could we return to the world we had abandoned, not as conquerors, but as witnesses worthy of trust? A low rumble shook the spire, and the guardian dragon emerged from the orb itself, wings unfurling with a sound that shattered perception. Its eyes locked on me, and in that gaze, a revelation that was almost too much to bear. The dragon's memory of humanity was not static. It could change. It could evolve. And our actions now here, in this chamber, in this moment, would ripple through that memory, shaping the way the dragons remembered every human after us. Fear twisted in my stomach, but beneath it, something else rose: responsibility. If we failed here, we would not only be judged, we would alter the perception of humanity for centuries, perhaps millennia. And the planet itself seemed to sense that, the spire's energy pulsing faster, the light of the orb brightening, illuminating our deepest fears and highest potentials simultaneously. Then came the first attack, not physical, but mental. The Guardian's presence surged into our minds like a tidal wave. Memories that were not our own visions of dragons in conflict, of humans betrayed, of worlds destroyed flooded us. It was overwhelming, terrifying, and yet mesmerizing. And within that storm of memory, a whisper emerged, quiet but unmistakable. You must choose. Observe, understand, or be forgotten. The hatchling screeched again, urging us to follow deeper into the spire. The path narrowed, twisting down into a cavern lit by flowing streams of liquid light, reflecting dragons in mid-flight, humans walking among them, and symbols we could not yet decipher. But here, at the threshold of what felt like the very heart of the planet, a terrifying possibility dawned. The dragons were not only archivists of memory, they were curators, capable of selecting which threads of history endured, which were rewritten. And then the first physical movement, a ripple across the orb's surface, and from it, a projection. A human form, long extinct, stepped forward, eyes wide with the same recognition and awe we felt. It reached out toward the hatchling, and as it did, the guardian dragon lowered its head in acknowledgement. And in that moment, the truth crystallized. The dragons had preserved fragments of humanity for a purpose, not merely as record, but as guideposts. And we living humans returned to this forbidden world were now the next chapter. As the chamber trembled, the air thick with charged energy, and the guardian's wings cast shifting shadows across the crystalline walls, a chilling realization settled over us. We had entered not a sanctuary, not a repository, but a crucible. And what emerged from it would define not just our fate, but the memory of humanity itself. The hatchling's golden eyes met mine, and in them I understood the final truth of this moment. The dragons did not simply remember us. They were waiting to see if we were worthy of being remembered. And in that waiting, in that charged silence, a new question rose more dangerous than anything we had faced so far. What if some part of humanity is already beyond redemption? Before we could answer, the ground shook violently, and a fissure split the floor beneath our feet. A rush of heat and light erupted from the depths of the spire, and the projection of the human form screamed, not in sound, but in psychic resonance. The hatchling leapt toward the abyss, wings flaring as the guardian roared, and the spire itself began to bend reality around us. We were no longer in control, and as the walls twisted and the dragon's eyes glowed with molten judgment, the truth became undeniable. The memory of humanity was awakening, and we were about to witness the consequences of what it had remembered. The next step was no longer a choice. It was survival. The light of the spire had dimmed, leaving the chamber bathed in a soft, almost reverent glow. The tremors subsided, leaving only a quiet hum, a resonance that seemed to echo from the very bones of the planet. The fissure that had split the floor had sealed itself, the cavern returning to its crystalline perfection as though nothing had happened. And yet, the weight of what we had witnessed, the roar of the guardian, the surge of memory, the living archive of humanity remained etched into us, permanent and undeniable. The hatchling hovered beside us, wings vibrating lightly, golden eyes reflecting not fear, but calm understanding. It had guided us through the chaos, through the crucible, and now, as we stood on the threshold of the spire's heart, it felt like a companion, not a creature of instinct, but a being of insight, bridging the divide between species and centuries. The orb, now steady and pulsating gently, displayed visions not of destruction, but of connection. Dragons soaring across skies, humans walking alongside them, hands touching scales in trust, eyes meeting with mutual recognition. We stepped closer to the orb, our movements careful, deliberate. The projection of the long-extinct human figure lingered, eyes full of wisdom that transcended mortality. It raised a hand, and in that gesture, a message became clear, not through language, not through thought, but through feeling. The dragons had always sought to preserve not just memory, but potential. Humanity's legacy was not a ledger of triumphs or failures, but a record of choices, a mirror reflecting what we could be if we embraced understanding, empathy, and reverence for life beyond ourselves. I reached out, and for the first time, the orb's surface rippled beneath my fingers. It was cool, yet alive, responsive in a way that defied logic. And in that touch, a wave of comprehension swept over me. The dragons did not remember humanity to punish, to judge, or to exact vengeance. They remembered us because we were capable of remembrance ourselves. The acts we had done, the species we had been, the worlds we had shaped and destroyed, they were all stored in their consciousness as a reflection, a lesson, and a call. We wandered the chamber in silence, each of us absorbed in visions projected from the orb. Liara touched the walls, and the dragons embedded in the stone shifted slightly, responding to her presence, acknowledging her, welcoming her. Even the smaller members of our team found themselves drawn into subtle interactions, the movement of wings, the flicker of scales, a pulse of light through crystal veins. The planet, the dragons, the memory itself, everything felt alive, sentient, and yet gentle in its judgment. Outside, the storm had broken. The clouds parted, revealing a sky the color of molten sapphire, streaked with light from distant suns. From the ledges of the valley, dragons emerged, soaring in arcs that traced the currents of air, as if painting invisible constellations. The guardian hovered at the spire's apex, wings outstretched, eyes that had once radiated judgment, now calm, observant, patient. And the hatchling, small yet radiant, took to the air, darting among the adults with an elegance that defied its size. We climbed a ledge near the spire's edge, overlooking the valley. The bioluminescent rivers glimmered like veins of life running through the landscape. Forests of crystal swayed in silent rhythm, and the ruins of human architecture shimmered faintly beneath the dragon's watchful gaze. For the first time, the weight of fear, awe, and uncertainty lifted, replaced by a profound understanding. We were witnessing not a kingdom of predators, but a living testament to continuity, to memory, to possibility. I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us here, the storms, the tremors, the impossible visions, the questions that had haunted our minds since the first moment we saw the planet from orbit. All of it had led to this quiet revelation. Memory, whether human or draconic, was not static. It lived, it breathed, it evolved, and with it, so did understanding. What the dragons remembered was not simply what we had been, it was what we might still become. The hatchling landed on the edge beside me, a small weight against the expanse of the valley. Its presence was comforting, a reminder that connection could be formed even across species, even across centuries. And in its eyes I saw the reflection of our own humanity, the capacity to observe, to learn, to change. For a moment, it felt like the answer to the question that had haunted us from the start. Why would dragons remember humanity at all? Not because we had dominated or destroyed, but because memory itself was a form of hope. A chance to reconcile, to understand, to grow. As the sun-real tangible light began to pierce the clouds, the dragons in the valley moved in a slow, coordinated dance. It was not hunting, it was not war. It was ritual, a demonstration of presence and unity, of life persisting beyond chaos and destruction. The hatchling joined the flow, weaving through its elders, and we realized that we were witnessing something beyond spectacle. It was communion, a silent acknowledgement that our species, though flawed, had the potential to become worthy of remembrance. The orb shimmered one last time, its surface dissolving into a cascade of light that spread through the chamber, touching each of us with warmth, understanding, and resolve. And in that moment, a final vision took hold. Dragons soaring across continents long lost, humans walking beside them, not as conquerors, but as companions, builders of worlds that honored life in all its forms. It was a vision that could never fully manifest in the reality we knew, but its possibility existed, and in its existence, there was power. We turned to leave the chamber, the spire behind us pulsing faintly, as though sighing with satisfaction. Outside, the storm clouds had cleared completely. The dragons circled above the valley one last time before dispersing into the open sky. The hatchling lingered for a moment, then took off in a graceful arc, vanishing into the horizon. And in that absence, I understood the final truth. Memory, trust, and understanding were fragile, but persistent. The dragon's legacy was not static judgment, it was an invitation. And the future, whether we rose to it or fell from it, was ours to navigate. As we boarded our ship, I lingered at the spire's edge, watching the valley stretch below. Every detail, every pulse of light, every ripple in the crystalline forests felt like a heartbeat, a reminder that life, memory, and consciousness were intertwined in ways humanity could barely comprehend. And yet, despite the impossibility, despite the immensity of what we had encountered, I felt a quiet serenity, a knowledge that even in a universe so vast and indifferent, connection, empathy, and understanding could endure. The engines hummed to life, and as the ship lifted from the planet, the dragons became silhouettes against the brightening sky. The hatchling's golden eyes seemed to linger in my memory, a reminder of what it meant to be seen, truly seen, and remembered. The spire faded from view, yet the feeling of presence lingered, echoing across the void, stretching across light years, a subtle resonance in our minds that whispered not fear, but reflection. I thought of humanity, and what we had left behind, and what we might yet become. Could we rise to be worthy of such memory? Could we learn from our failures, embrace the responsibility that comes with being remembered? And even as these questions formed, I realized they were not meant for immediate answers. They were meant to linger, to grow, to shape us as the dragon's memory had shaped them. In the quiet that followed, I looked around at my crew. Faces tired, eyes wide with awe, hearts full with understanding. None of us would speak immediately. Words could not encompass the experience, the gravity, the lessons of the Forbidden's planet. But in the silence, there was comprehension. In the silence, there was hope. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, vast, cold, yet now tinged with meaning. We had witnessed a world where dragons ruled and remembered, where memory was not merely record, but consciousness, choice, and potential. And as the ship drifted further into the black, one thought resonated more powerfully than any fear or doubt. The universe is alive with memory, and those who remember us may not simply be creatures of the past, but guides, guardians, and keepers of what we could become. And in that thought, there was comfort and a subtle, thrilling uncertainty. Because memory is not passive, it is not neutral. It waits, observes, and in the silence of its watch, it asks us, what will we do now? And what will they remember of us? The Forbidden's planet faded into the distance, a jewel of storms, crystal, and dragons. But its presence remained, not in sight, but in consciousness. And somewhere, deep in the echoes of space and mind, I knew the dragon's memory had followed us, not to haunt, but to guide. And in that guidance, the story of humanity had only just begun.